This is Land of Havilah, Job 3. Job's 3 friends were appalled at his condition, sat on the ground with him, and no one said anything for 7 days. Then, verse 1. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. Comment, he'll curse the day of his birth for the full chapter. We have to keep in mind that God approves of Job, and Job's in dire circumstances. If we assign any blame to Job for the distressed comments that proceed from his mouth, we run the risk of being as useless as his 3 friends. Verse 2. Job answered, "Let the day perish in which I was born, the night which said, 'There's a boy conceived.' Let that day be darkness. Don't let God from above seek for it, neither let the light shine on it." Comment, Job's and his friends' remarks will be in poetic form. From here on out, it'll be a book of poetry whenever Job and his friends are speaking. For understanding, we'll restate some of what they say in prose, but we all understand no restatement could exactly capture the original. In verses 1 and 2, Job basically says, I wish I'd never been born. I wish I could erase the day from the calendar so that not even God remembers it. Still speaking of that day, Job says, verse 5, "Let darkness and the shadow of death claim it for their own. Let a cloud dwell on it. Let all that makes black the day terrify it. As for that night, let thick darkness seize on it. Let it not rejoice among the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months." Comment, he says, I wish that day would vaporize into nothing and not even be a day on the calendar. All the blessings of his past are no consolation for what he's experiencing now. Verse 7. "Behold, let that night be barren. Let no joyful voice come therein. Let them curse it who curse the day, who are ready to rouse up Leviathan." Comment, chapter 41 will describe Leviathan with many details. He's a monstrous sea dragon with teeth, scales, and limbs that moves rapidly in a twisting or squirming motion and breathes smoke and fire. In the sea, he turns his path into boiling white water. However, he can also move on his belly over the mud. He's violent and completely overpowering to man. God will punish him with a sword in the end. Job 3:8, Job 41, 1-34, Psalm 74:14, Psalm 104:26, and Isaiah 27:1. It seems we're to understand Leviathan as a fictional creature, a poetic device. He's in 5 passages total, but always as a single creature, something like the fictional Godzilla or Loch Ness Monster, which are one-of-a-kind creatures with no parents or offspring. He's never a Leviathan as if there were more like him. He's just Leviathan as if he were a single specimen. He's the embodiment of terror and violence against which man is helpless. Or we could think of him as an embodiment and poetic figure of Satan. It's not clear in verse 8 why Job brings up Leviathan, what he's saying, but maybe he's looking for someone on the earth that has enough fortitude that he's able to rouse Leviathan to come swallow the day he was born, like feeding that day to a lion. Still speaking of that day, verse 9, "Let the stars of its twilight be dark. Let it look for light, but have none, neither let it see the eyelids of the morning." Comment, he wants to turn back the hands of time and keep that day from dawning. Why? Verse 10. "Because it didn't shut up the doors of my mother's womb, nor did it hide trouble from my eyes. Why didn't I die from the womb? Why didn't I give up the spirit when my mother bore me? Why did the knees receive me, or why the breast that I should nurse? For now I should have lain down and been quiet. I should have slept, then I would have been at rest." Comment, if I had died in infancy, I could be resting now. I could have been, verse 14, "with the kings and counselors of the earth who build up waste places for themselves, or with princes who had gold who filled their houses with silver." Comment, life's useless even to kings and princes, even when they build up cities and accumulate riches for themselves. What's the use? They lose it when they die. I should be with all the dead princes and kings now. Or, verse 16, "Or as a hidden untimely birth I had not been, as infants who never saw light." Comment, Job says, why couldn't I have been a miscarriage? So Job's first choice is to have never been born at all. Second choice to be a miscarriage. Third choice to die at birth. Fourth choice to have already died at some point along the way. Speaking of the place of the dead, verse 17, "There the wicked cease from troubling. There the weary are at rest. There the prisoners are at ease together. They don't hear the voice of the taskmaster. The small and the great are there. The servant is free from his master. Comment, death's good for everybody. If a person was wicked, he causes no more trouble on the earth. If he was weary, he's at rest. If he was a prisoner, he's released. If he was a slave, he doesn't hear the voice of the taskmaster anymore. Death makes so much sense and life no sense at all. Verse 20. Why is light given to him who's in misery, life to the bitter in soul, who long for death but it doesn't come, and dig for it more than hidden treasures, who rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave? Comment, some people embrace the idea of death because they're in such misery. If they've been suffering for a long time, they might even say, I'm afraid I'll never die. They might wonder, as in verses 20 to 22, quote, why is light given to him who's in misery, who long for death but it doesn't come? Verse 23. Why is light given to a man whose way is hidden, whom God has hedged in? Comment, Job's shut in at home. He doesn't get out anymore. Why does God still give him the light of life? Verse 24. For my sighing comes before I eat. My groanings are poured out like water. Comment, not even my food is pleasant. I sigh before I eat it. Coming up, Job's thinking like a pessimist, verse 25. For the thing which I fear comes on me. That which I'm afraid of comes to me. I'm not at ease, neither am I quiet, neither have I rest, but trouble comes. Comment, Job says, I only expect the worst because that's what always happens. The Bible commands us to be optimistic. Quote, without faith, it's impossible to be well-pleasing to him, for he who comes to God must believe that he exists and that he's the rewarder of those who seek him. Hebrews 11:6. We have to believe our bad days are a setup for something better, that God will reward us for anything negative that happens to us, so long as we hang on and suffer our bad times in faith. Even when we lose our good outlook, as Job has lost it, God may still reward us, though we were sourpusses about it, as he rewarded Job at the end of the book. Job's suffering seemed to go on forever, but it turned out to be only a short blip between two very long periods of health and prosperity. He'll get plenty of relief in his natural lifetime. If relief doesn't come to us in this life, it will come in the next, since God is the rewarder of those who diligently seek him. In the meantime, faith is a relief in and of itself. We can make ourselves more miserable with our attitude, or console ourselves with the truth that God will reward us. Job 4 is next.